I'm pleased to see colleagues join me for what I believe is the first ever debate solely on the Ivanhoe Line, a line which would reopen a direct passenger link between Leicester and Burton-upon-Trent. And it's a train line with a long history. Before the 1830s, Colville did not exist. It was known as Long Lane and included 4 medieval parishes of Whitwick, Hugglescote, Snibston and Swannington. When William Stenston, the proprietor of Whitwick Coal Mines, returned from a trip from the Stockton-Darlington Railway, he carefully studied the land between Long Lane and Leicester, taking into account the mines of Ibstock and Bagworth. He planned the line of a possible railway. He enlisted the help of George Stephenson, the father of the railway, who delegated the construction of the Swannington to Leicester Railway to his son Robert, which became the 6th steam railway in the country, linking Leicester and Long Lane together so coal could easily be transported between the two. Some estimate that this was around the same time the town became known as Colville. The line traditionally transported coal before then it was open to passengers. Flash forward to the 1960s, when the now called Ivanhoe Line was closed during the infamous Beeching Cuts on the 7th of September 1964. Since then, it's been subject to many campaigns to get this line back up and running, especially as the line remained open to freight traffic till only recently. Of course.
First of all, can I congratulate the lady for North West Leicestershire and for bringing it forward to speak to beforehand. And I wish to have my support and encourage the honourable lady, and that's why I'm on my feet. Hearing from a constituent who once had a railway line, and now we have no railway line whatsoever in the entire constituency, which is a rural constituency, I do agree that sometimes the bottom line is not the financial one. And sometimes obligations need to extend to more than profit margins. So does the honourable lady not agree that there must be an obligation, and if necessary, a statutory obligation to provide service in isolated areas?
Thank you, Chair. And I thank the honourable member for his intervention. I will certainly get on into my speech about actually how do we connect our communities, and I think it's a really important one. So thank you for sharing that. The lack of maintenance on the line is what led to the gradual withdrawal of freight services, although the private section from Bardon Quarry to the rail network is still operational, and the quarry has recently extended its lease. There was an opportunity to get this line up and running in the 90s, but this was thwarted by the breakup of British Rail when it was privatised. Throughout all of this change, there's been continuous local pressure on the need to deliver a passenger rail service for my constituents, with the most recent business case, which was supported by under Stage 1 of the Restoring Your Railways Fund, which Lord Hendy, our Rail Minister, was the chair. The project originated from a successful bid by the Campaign to Reopen the Ivanhoe Line, or CRIL, and was one of the 12 projects nationally to receive Restoring Your Railways development funding. I want to take a moment to thank everybody from CRIL and all of their hard work that they've done to get to this stage. The project was in phase 1 of Restoring Your Railways and was for a partial reopening from Colville to Burton-upon-Trent, with stations at Ashby-de-la-Zouch, Castle Gresley and Colville. This would have finally reconnected the 2 of the largest towns not connected to the rail network, Colville and Swadlincote. These 2 towns have also seen the highest growth in homes and employment in the last decade. The East Midlands has grown by 8%, yet North West Leicestershire, my constituency, has grown by 12%, and South Derbyshire has grown by 13%.
On that point, will the honourable member give way?
Of course, I'll give way.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I know that she, and for securing this debate, I know that she has been a fierce champion for this campaign since before she became an MP, and she has been relentless since, and I love her for it. I also want to give my thanks to members of the campaign for reopening the Ivanhoe Line that live in South Derbyshire. Swadlincote lost its original Midland Railway station in 1947, leaving it a disconnected town. And there are very few places the size of Swad in the UK without a train station. And if you want to get anywhere, the nearest train station is at Burton. And if you want to get trains maybe directly to our capital city, you'd have to go to Tamworth, which is 30 minutes away on a good day and over 15 miles away. East Midlands Parkway, over 30 minutes away, I beg your pardon. And there are are many others. So as somebody who wants to see South Derbyshire continue to grow, but with great tech jobs being brought to people and opportunity in South Derbyshire, does my honourable friend agree with me that reopening the Ivanhoe Line for passengers and railway station in Castle Gresley again would help create a two-way gateway and opportunity for people in Swadlincote and the surrounding areas?
Thank you. I thank my honourable friend for that intervention and for her support during this campaign. I think the main thing is that large towns need that infrastructure to match. There are certainly other examples investing in railways to connect towns that are exceeding their passenger targets, such as the Northumberland line. Of course.
Thank you. What she's talking about reminds me of an issue that affects my constituents. The line between Liverpool and Preston crosses the line between Southport and Manchester. And up until the 1960s, these two lines were linked with two curves at the town of Burscough, just outside of my constituency. There's been a campaign for 60 years to get these curves reopened in order to re-engage and reinstall the commuter link between Southport and Ormskirk and also Southport and Preston. If we can do this, it adds huge amounts of GVA to the local area and can create an economic powerhouse for the North West. The cost to rebuild and reopen the Burscough curves has been estimated at just £35 million. Does she agree with me that that would be £35 million very well spent?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. I don't know a huge amount about his line, but that certainly seems to be good value for money. But I think that, it adds to the point around towns that need infrastructure. And what does that infrastructure do? It gives those people that opportunity. And on that point, I'd like to ask the Minister what work has been done for an impact assessment on growth and investment on large towns like mine and my colleagues of those towns not connected to the rail network. North West Leicestershire, alongside other parts of the East Midlands, are outside the East Midlands Combined Authority and does not benefit from the city region allocation, which for Derby, Derbyshire, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire is £2 billion. Whilst part of the Ivanhoe does travel through my colleagues for South Derbyshire's constituency, it ends in Burton, which is again outside that combined authority. Yet the Ivanhoe line has the opportunity to connect my constituents to Derby via Burton and vice versa. The money that's been allocated to Leicestershire is limited to money for public transport and the very long overdue road improvements. If Leicester and Leicestershire were allocated a city region funding at the same rate as the combined authority, we'd have £1 billion to invest in Leicester and Leicestershire. We can't just accept the morality alone gets the increase when we know, in fact, that the East Midlands lags behind in terms of funding. And research has shown between 2019 and 2024, had the East Midlands received the same funding as the UK average, we'd have had about 10 billion extra for transport. So can the Minister highlight how areas such as Leicester and Leicestershire, within the most poorly funded region for transport investment, will be supported to ensure services can be provided? Now I want to talk about the value of the train line for our communities, the exciting bit, the most important bit. Now, MPs can get really competitive when it comes to who has the prettiest constituency, but mine is at the heart of the National Forest, and it really doesn't get much better than that. The National Forest Company transformed the post-industrial landscape into a thriving success story of environmentally led regeneration in the Midlands. Reopening the Ivanhoe Line has the potential to create a beautiful train line travelling through the greenery of the National Forest. The National Forest reached out for me for this debate and shared their recent research, which found the second highest contributor to CO2 emissions within the National Forest is resident travel, with car travel accounting for about 14% of the residents-based footprint, higher than the national average.
Will she give way?
Of course, I'll give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. She stressed the importance of rail freight, and within the Great British Railways bill that we're currently debating, there is a target to increase rail freight. Does she share the concerns that have been relayed to me about the potential of this line being closed to freight, and that actually we should be getting lorries and haulage off our roads and onto rail freight as we're setting out in Great British Railways?
thank my honourable friend for that intervention. I will be coming on to Freight in a little while, so he preempts that bit of the speech. The National Forest also share that 99% of their over 200,000 annual visitors to Conkers, one of the key attractions in the National Forest, they travel by car, 99%. So it feels counterproductive to have only driving as an option to make most of our most green spaces. And there's certainly the opportunity of investment along the line at Moira to assist with this. The reopening of the Ivanhoe Line through the National Forest is critical if we're serious about reducing carbon emissions in this part of the Midlands. There's also a local idea of changing the name from Ivanhoe to the National Forest Line. I think that's got a good ring to it. Last year, I did a survey. About 400 people in my constituency responded. 90% said they travel by car because of poor public transport. 72% said no public transport options prevent them from travelling to where they want to go. And 97% supported the restoration of the Ivanhoe Line. My constituent Karen pointed out there are many attractions and services in Ashby, and the rail line would be a valuable asset, bringing people to the castle, leisure facilities and the array of shops, pubs and cafes. Ashby is a pure market town. Unsurprisingly, a lot have also reached about the opening of the line would help them to access job and opportunities outside the area. One of my constituents shared she's disabled and wants to work in Leicester, but struggles on the buses to Ashby. One constituent shared how a train line would help him connect to see his young daughter more, connecting and putting his family back together. Another, who works for a management team at the homeless charity, explained that their clients this would remove some of the barriers to accessing accommodation, attending appointments and securing local job opportunities. My younger constituents, it's fantastic to hear this government stress the importance of apprenticeships, of fulfilling educating job opportunities for all. But how are they going to get there? When I meet with young people like William across my constituency, they tell me that public transport is a huge barrier to getting them the training, opportunities and apprenticeship they deserve. The buses also are leaving people stranded, like Dave, who contacted me over the weekend. He went to watch a Leicester City match and got the last bus home to Ashby. The bus, however, stopped off in Coveville, and the passengers told to get off and walk to another bus stop. They waited and waited for a bus that never arrived. He quite rightly says, where simple bus ride can't get people home, a train line would help enormously. North West Leicestershire also doesn't have a main hospital. My constituents travel to Derby, Leicester, Nottingham or Burton. Having to rely on the services as unreliable as the one I've just described is a real problem. It's not, just to put it simply, as one constituent did in the survey, it's harder to think of reasons not to open the line than to reopen it. I understand that ever since we've come into office, we've had the upgoing battle about the financial mess the previous government left behind. On that point, I just want to briefly segue into another rail project of HS2, one of them been marred by significant delays and cost overruns, but also a passenger rail service that would literally have just gone through my constituency, moving a dual carriageway in my constituency, but not bringing a train station. The HS2 also owns more homes in my constituency than any in the UK at 74. I've written to the Secretary of State on this issue and be grateful if my constituents can get a definitive answer on how that money can be reinvested. My constituents with assets purchased for HS2 be allocated the appreciated asset value, but also the rental income that's coming in too. If we could set aside this money for rail improvements, that would make such a difference. HS2 was about providing capacity, and for the East Midlands, Ivanhoe was the only project to progress in the restoring a railway, creating freight capacity for both passenger and freight. It's astounding to many other rail infrastructure projects because we already have a track in place and therefore it's quick to deliver. I've been engaged with CRIL, Network Rail, Midlands Connect, East Midlands Rail, Siemens Mobility, the East Midlands Combined Authority and the National Forest. I've had numerous meetings with ministers in the Department for Transport and mentioned the Ivanhoe Line whenever possible, here and in the Chamber. North West Leicestershire has so much potential and we have to make it count. We sit in the heart of the UK with great people, ever-evolving community, tons of aspiration, an industrial past we're proud of that has got a real sense of looking forward. Yeah. Significant levels of investment in UK logistics have not gone in hand with as much infrastructure investment that our community needs. In fact, the line would go through the Golden Triangle, freight logistics areas with the most intense concentration of warehousing in the country. Therefore, we should expect the opportunity to improve public transport in this important employment hub. North West Leicestershire is in some ways a great set of contradictions. An international airport, yet poor public transport. East Midlands Rail Freight Terminal, yet no passenger rail. Great road networks, yet local rails have been so poorly invested in. Enhancing our environment with the National Forest, planting more green trees to tackle carbon emissions, but cancelling that out by only having car as your option. Siemens Mobility, the train signalling company, is based in my constituency, yet none of their staff can get to work on the train. We have a line, we have the stations reserved in the local plan. The delivery from start to finish would be very short. The biggest contradiction is that we've gone back on public transport connectivity since the 60s, but we've grown exponentially since then. The reopening of the Ivanhoe Line would be beneficial to investment and growth in public transport, but also recognise that we have to prepare for the population growth that's already contained in the local plan, let alone the new ones in progress. I promise my constituents I continue to push for the rightful restoration of the Ivanhoe Line, all the way from Burton to Leicester, and I look forward to the Minister's response.
The question is that this House has considered restoration of the Ivanhoe Line. Minister.
Thank you, Ms McVeigh, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I would like to begin by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for North West Leicestershire, for securing this debate, and for everyone else for their contributions today, including the members for Southport, Burton and New Toxteth, Strangford and South Derbyshire. On a practical point, may I just say that I will chase the correspondence that the Honourable Lady refers to in relation to HS2. But may I also start by just saying more broadly that I would like to thank her for her work in advocating on behalf of her constituents and championing their need to have public transport that serves their interests. She rightly points to the fact that this government believes that transport is not just a means of getting from A to B, it's a key way in which we fulfil the lives of people in the United Kingdom, connect them to greater economic opportunity, connect them to their families, and also use the transport network as a catalyst for economic growth, for making sure that we have the housing that people need, and she appears to be laser focused on those principles in her work and her advocacy, and I thank her for it. I'm grateful for the passionate case that she made for reconnecting the towns of North West Leicestershire in the heart of the National Forest, like Ashby's de la Zouche, Colville and Swadlincote, with passenger railway services to Burton-on-Trent and Leicester, bringing back services lost in 1964, with only quarry freight services still operating today. Transport connections, such as the ones that she references, underpin the core missions of this government, whether that be kick-starting economic growth, unlocking housing delivery, and breaking down barriers to opportunity to transform lives. Our objective is simple but ambitious: to build a stronger, more connected transport network that works for everyone wherever they live. And we believe that local authorities are best placed to make decisions about the investment priorities in their area. But too often, Chair, places like North West Leicestershire have faced fragmented funding and limited flexibility, and that is why from April we are providing all local transport authorities with more consolidated funding settlements, giving them the ability to align transport investment with local priorities and wider regional objectives, accelerating projects that matter most to their residents, to businesses and to visitors. The Ivanhoe Line route cuts through Leicestershire, Derbyshire and Staffordshire. In Leicestershire, for example, this means a total of more than £251 million of vital investment across highways, maintenance, active travel, electric vehicles, bus services and other local transport will be delivered through consolidated funding by 2029-30. Elsewhere along the line, Staffordshire will receive £342 million and the East Midlands Mayor over £2 billion by March 2032, though I do take away the point that my honourable friend made very powerfully about the disparities that exist between funding in mayoral combined authorities and the local authorities which directly boundary them, and that is something that we are working on through the railway bill to create more democratic accountability irrespective of your mayoral arrangement. But I think that's a point very well made that I'll take away from this debate. But this settlement will support transport authorities, including those outside of MCAs, to strengthen their road, public transport, walking and cycling links between towns, cities and rural areas, and ensure that improvements are felt across the entire region. And soon we will embed this approach right across the country through our integrated national transport strategy. The strategy will champion transport that is designed, built and operated with people at its heart, recognising that different places face different connectivity challenges and therefore need different solutions, but that they also have different opportunities to realise as well. And I think that my honourable friend made a really important point about the latent potential in the tourism industry in her constituency and how the government must work hard to realise it in partnership with her. We want to focus on making transport safer, more reliable and more accessible, giving more people confidence in the network and that it will work for them. Crucially, it will also align transport more closely with housing and with public services, recognising that poor connectivity entrenches inequality, while good connectivity expands opportunity. Now, I would like to commend the work of the Honourable Member in championing the case for reinstating passenger services on the Ivanhoe Line, building on previous work to assess the viability of the scheme. And while the Chancellor took essential steps, closing the previous government's unfortunately unfunded commitments in the Restoring Your Railways programme in 2024 to help balance the public finances, we welcome transport authorities using local funding to develop the business case for their important local priorities. Indeed, authorities can work with Network Rail to develop and present business cases and investment proposals for consideration to the rail network enhancements pipeline, the government's funding portfolio for rail upgrades, at any stage of development. This process ensures funding decisions are affordable and represent good value for taxpayers. The government is also keen to facilitate third-party investment in railway infrastructure that could support local development and housing plans. And I would urge local transport authorities to make best use of the funding we are making available to them, to make the right decisions for improving transport connections across all modes for Ashby, Colville, Swadlincote and elsewhere. And recognise the importance of improving transport connections in the wider Midlands region. In July's spending review, the Chancellor committed to progressing to the next stage of the Midlands Rail Hub. The Midlands Rail Hub unlocks thousands of homes and drives economic growth with better connections and more reliable journeys for passengers. The first phase will create capacity in central Birmingham to improve reliability and enable additional trains locally, and to Worcester, South Wales and the South West. And we are working closely with Network Rail to ensure passenger benefit as soon as possible. And depending on future investment decisions, the later phases of the rail hub would also mean major benefits for the East Midlands, with extra trains between Birmingham, Derby and Nottingham, including between stops at Burton-on-Trent, as well as between Birmingham and Leicester. And the East Midlands Railway's new bi-mode class 810 Aurora trains have already started to enter passenger service on the Midlands Main Line through Leicester and will continue with a phased rollout through 2026. These new trains will bring a step change in the customer experience and will support growth. And once all new trains are up and running, they will provide a 46% uplift in capacity with more seats and carriages. So, to conclude, today's discussion was an opportunity to reflect not only on the case for the restoration of the Ivanhoe Line, but also this government's priorities for improving transport connections to help people get about and access the opportunities they deserve, and how we can support local authorities in the East Midlands to deliver on the transport priorities of their communities. While I feel I may not have been able to answer the aspirations, the noble and ambitious aspirations that my honourable friend has put forward today, I encourage her to keep the conversation going, to continue to hold DfT ministers' feet to the fire on this most important of issues. She is a tireless champion on behalf of her constituents and their ability to get where they need to go, realise economic opportunity and live richer and more fulfilled lives. I encourage her to continue in those efforts, and I will watch with interest as she does so. Thank you.